Hi everyone, welcome back to ShamanTalk. I've been on a long break. You know me, I take these breaks sometimes, but we're over 100 episodes in. Can't remember what number we're at, 112 or something. And my guest today inspired me to kickstart the series again. So I'm really delighted to welcome Gio, who is a Glasgow-based witch and somebody that caught my eye on social media this year. And she's been practicing for 25 years, she reckons. Her husband disagrees, thinks it's longer, but we're sticking with 25. And one of the things that really, the first thing that drew me to Geo was, I actually saw you on TikTok, right? First. Because obviously I've had my own journey with TikTok and I saw you talking about saining. And I was like, oh, because I've had quite a journey talking about saining online. I got absolutely for want of a better word, witch hunted by a whole load of Scottish witches who hated me for ages and hunted me down and were really horrible to me and made it actually really unpleasant. So to find somebody who talks about to find somebody that talks about saining in the same kind of vein as me was really exciting. And then I saw you over on Instagram and I just started watching what you were doing and I really enjoyed the rhythm and the flow of your content, and it's not fast was one of the things I enjoyed. It was just, and you've got a lovely lilt and obviously you're Scottish. So that's where I found you. And then just before we come on, you're like, oh my God, I've followed you as well. And I've been to some of your classes.
Ages and ages.
So it's actually really nice. So we're just going to have a blether, folks. So come along for the ride. Welcome, Gio. So nice to have you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I feel really weird to be speaking to you because I've followed you for such a long time, but also I feel as if you're my next door neighbour, so I can chat to you anytime I like.
Yeah, which is
It
really
feels quite
nice.
nice. Yeah, it is nice.
So I thought we could start because I'm hoping that my folk will listen to this and your folk will listen to this, and it might
Yeah.
be nice to start off by saying that I find my way to Scottish folk magic and Scottish nature-based practices in general through shamanism,
Mm-hmm.
and you find your way here to that genre through witchcraft. So my story is that my parents were both really spiritual, but not in very healthy ways. So there was lots of things that I was immersed in growing up, and then my dad died and it was a whole thing. And then I accidentally found myself in a shamanic class, like a journeying class. And it was amazing. It was like cliche coming home, one of the most profound moments of my life. Not the most profound moment, but one of them. And I thought, this is it. This is what I want to do. And it saved my life in more ways than I can count. I've told this story a lot, but for anybody who's new to me, this is the idea. So then I used to be an accountant, corporate, yeah, all that. I used to run St Andrews essentially. Well, not really, but at the town centre of St Andrews, I used to be the business improvement area manager for St Andrews, which is what I did when I was training to be a
That sounds
shaman, which was
incredibly stressful.
it was actually really fun and quite
Yeah.
helpful. Honestly, like the shamanic part, like bringing in the spiritual to that really stressful job, made it much easier as it
Yeah.
happens. So then, as soon as I could get out of that, this has been my full time job for a decade. So it's great. I love it. But somewhere along the way, I was like, what am I missing? Like, what is it? And then I met some wonderful people who brought in the idea that, oh, we have our own nature based practices in Britain. We don't need to go all over the world to find them. So then I did a deep dive, find my way into a lot of our native practices, which was really exciting. And then took a lot of flack from people because they don't like the label that I use and they don't like the fact that I call it shamanism or Celtic shamanism. But the way I see it or think about it is that, well, that's how I found my way here. I would never have known that we had what we have, and I would not be doing my bit to preserve our culture if I didn't find my way to it through shamanism. So there will be other people like that as well. And I see that as kind of my small role in this because witchcraft never appealed to me. It wasn't something that called to my soul. So you find your way here down a different path. What's your story?
So, my origin story. I wish
Aye.
it was really I used to think my origin story was really unique and dead, niche. And then I started speaking about it online, and all these women were like, "Me too." So about that kind of 14-year-old brain change that we get, I found myself in a spirit in the only kind of occult spiritualist shop in the town that I lived in at the time. I just absolutely loved every single bit of it. It was in the 90s, so it was all very Wicca centric. So everything was about Wicca and Gerald Gardner and all of these rules and laws that you had to put in place. But I was really lucky because the woman who ran that shop was like, this is stuff that's based off of Scottish practice and English practice and Welsh practice and practices from Norway. So it'll speak about Yule, but Yule's got nothing to do with us. And I was like, so that was my, like, the first day one, page one, someone said, we have this in our culture. And I was really lucky because I grew up in Glasgow, and Glasgow is split down the middle when it comes to religion. We've got the green on, I'm going to call it green and blue, that's got nothing to do with it, but we've got green on one side and blue on the other. And my mum is on one side of that and my dad was on the other side of it. And both of them decided that my sister and I were not going to be brought up in any formalised religion, and actively encouraged us to go and find answers to our big, deep spiritual questions outside of that religion. And I didn't quite understand what a gift that was until I, like a full adult. My dad was a huge reader and real understander of Carl Gustav Jung, and
Love Jung.
I know. So my dad would quote Jungian quotes to us from I was a little girl. And I grew up understanding about the collective unconscious and about archetypes and about the layers of, you know, the energy round about us, and that just never seemed unusual to me. So when I had this conversation with this woman in this metaphysical shop in a town centre, I was like, oh, okay, I totally get that and I understand it, and began kind of practicing then, and I was 14. So that was 30 years ago. My husband likes to remind me. But I don't think I formally called myself inside my own head a witch until I was about 19 or 20. And that was because I had my own place, I had my own house, and I was able to, not that my mum and dad would have bothered if I had stuff in the house, but I was clumsy, so if I had candles lit, they'd be like, put them out, you're going to burn our house down. So you know, I'm just saying that as I've earned something coming on before I came on the phone to you. But it is so that it started there, and I've just practiced. I've read books, I've gone to occasional meetups, I've had teachers who are not within witchcraft circles, who are Buddhist monastics and shamans, because you are on that journey of mine. You're a brick in my wall. People who communicate with angels. Have, you know, there's been so many people in my lineage that have taught me things, and because I'm looking at it through a veil of, well, this is a witchcraft practice, then that is really added to the humus of my life. It's really made my experience be less than just, I'm reading that book and that book says I do X, Y, or Z. So I've just really enjoyed, and I think it's kind of like, you know, when you grew up in the 90s, you got to do loads of stuff and make loads of mistakes, and there was no social media and no evidence to say this is what you did. That's what my witchcraft journey's been like. Thankfully, that's what my journey's been like, because there wasn't any social media. There was barely like group chats online to talk about these things.
Like MSN Messenger, maybe?
MSN Messenger.
But that was later, wasn't it?
Well, but things like that, and then little like Discord is like the new version of the stuff back then, but you had all these chat rooms before. And I just never got involved in any of that stuff hugely. And if people had a different opinion from me, I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. But I didn't ever feel that I needed to justify the way that I felt about a thing, or thought. If I read it and it rang true with me, then I took it as part of my practice. And if it didn't, then I left it and fully accepted it might ring true with me in 2 or 3 years. So the social media thing has just been new to me. Sharing my practice with people has been new to me. And on that scale, because my friends will tell you for the last 15, 20 years, I've been casually been like, we need to go to the beach tonight. Taking them down to places when we've been on like girls' trips away. I'm like, it's a full moon, we're going down here, bring your candles, and we'll do a thing. That's just, people have just accepted that that's how I've been, so I've never felt like I've had to like come out or follow a path or anything. I've spoken about being a witch more in the last, since January, than I ever have in my entire life, and it's been a bit weird. but also really lovely because I've got this beautiful community online who are just gorgeous. And when I tell you, I know that you said that you obviously got really dragged by those saining people at the beginning. I think I can count on both hands the amount of times I've had comments that I've been like, "Oh, you're getting blocked," and that's it. So I don't not like arguing with people, but I really like to be able to have good discussion with people to help them understand why it is that they are so offended by whatever it is that they think they're perceiving that I'm doing wrong. Because I know I'm not wrong, because it's my practice.
That's really interesting.
So I quite
exactly. Like the whole social media
thing.
thing's wild. Sorry, Gio, I think there's a wee delay there.
You carry on.
Okay, I was just saying that the social media thing's wild. I got on TikTok just at the start of COVID, just took a notion. Well, it's not a notion, is it? For me, it's like a wee sense of things. I was like, all right, okay. And for the most part, have been the same. I have to say it's been 95% positive. So I ended up coming away from TikTok a bit because I found it got a bit wild westy for a while. It was a bit much. There was a lot of like that you're describing, this backwards and forwards and the arguments, and I thought energetically that's not who I am as a person. It's not what I want to spend my time doing. So I skipped over to Instagram, and I've been doing that for a while, and I'll just get very few comments of people. I mean, I use the word shamanism, so I think I get a bit more grief for that. But even just like trying to explain to people that shamanism isn't Native American. If you want to get really technical about it, it's not. They never use that word, but people come at me for that, or they'll come at me for nature-based practices in general because it should only be Native Americans. It's like that. Have you read a book? Like, I don't feel like I can actually educate you to the point that it would be okay for us to have a discussion. Like, this is silly. So I don't do that.
That's the type of conversation though I'm like, okay, let's unpack that. Come and sit down and we'll chat about it. And I really like those conversations. But my husband really wonderfully reminded me that the internet is like your local community. And sometimes in your local community, you've got some guy who just screams at cars going past. And you don't need to engage in conversation with that guy, because you'll be there all day. And tomorrow you'll be back screaming at cars. So I need to...
I like that.
When I find those people, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and like energetically, I've had quite an interesting journey with it, because it did like kick off really quickly. Like, so my TikTok was similar to your Instagram in the beginning. It was just went whoosh, and I was at 180,000 before the blink of an eye. Wow. So it's quite an energetic shift having that much energy focused on you. So if for anyone who doesn't know, Gio came onto Instagram in January and is now at 220,000 followers last I checked.
230 this morning.
Which is amazing.
Those numbers don't mean anything to me. Yeah, I know. Those numbers don't mean anything to me, but...
well, I mean, to be honest, as a business person, the numbers don't mean anything unless you can actually like engage in a meaningful way. And if this is what you do, it's like bringing people into like some sort of... I mean, you do your saining workshop. That's one thing I've seen that you're doing, which is amazing. But like, just for the sake of it, can be really fulfilling. Actually, like when you're just educating people online. And for me, I'm also like, here's loads of free stuff. I do my podcast and I do loads of... I've got like a free community and all kinds of things I do. And then from that naturally flows abundance, because then people want to work with you more. And there's like there can be a really like positive way that one can interact with social media in a way that's really meaningful to the community. I think I hear a lot of people talk about, I don't like social media and I don't like doing it and it's shit, and it's just like, not, it's like crap, and I don't like selling myself. And I'm like, well, I've never sold myself. I've just shown up. And well, I do sell myself, but in the beginning it wasn't about that. It was like, I'm here giving value because I wish I'd had this, and for the most part that's still what I do. And then naturally things come out of it because it's like the intention that you're putting into it in the first place. Is that so? Why did you suddenly decide to start doing social media? Tell me.
So I started to so the process of it started long before I put my first video out. I didn't just wake up one morning and be like, let's stick this on here. I had been having a discussion with I've got this group of friends. There's 6 of us, and we've been friends for 15 years at least. And it was my first ever group of female friends who are flame fanners. They literally are like, what is it you're doing? And then they add fuel to that, and they've just, there's no competition or no argy-bargy or no none of that that goes on. And that's the first time that I had that as a 30-year-old woman finding these women. So we don't see each other loads. We've got a group chat like everyone else, but we were out at like a concert in Glasgow, this really beautiful singer, and we were in a church. They all turned, as we do, to speak to one another about the things that we're doing, and they said, and this was in October, and they said, so what are you doing next? Like, what? Because I've got one of those ADHD brains where I'm always doing like, I'm doing a wood carving project, or I'm like, or I've got the hobbies that I've had could fill a room for people to pick up their own hobbies of doing all the things that they want to do. And I said nothing, and they went, "That's not like you." I went, "No, I know. I just don't. There's nothing." And they were like, "Well, what's wrong?" I was like, "Nothing's wrong. I don't want to do anything just now. But like, I feel as if I want to do something, but I can't think what it is, and I've got no idea." And one of my friends is, I swear she carries like a whiteboard, a retractable whiteboard in her pocket. So she had it out, and she was like, "Okay, let's look at your objectives about your life and what you're doing, and we'll get you a 5-month plan and what's in front." So, and she's lovely, and I love that she does that, because she makes you question yourself a lot. And I had said, I'm really enjoying just leaning into my practice and doing the stuff that I'm doing, and I've been looking at making it accessible for my daughter, but I know that she's not going to read my books, because in every book I've got, there's like scrawled notes in the margins of things, and the likelihood that my kid's going to pick them up and read through the stuff that I've written about these books is pretty low. And she had said, "Well, why don't you think about something that's familiar to her?" And I thought, well, TikTok's familiar to her, so I started making videos. And in my head, it was to make sure that she understood where her Celtic heritage comes from a point of view of magic. And the first video that I made was a video about saining, and it was on Hogmanay. And I posted that on Hogmanay on the 31st of December, and it got hundreds overnight. And I was just absolutely blown away. I was like watching that on New Year's Day going, what's going on? And that's been the start of the process. So it was my videos were for her and are for her. And while I understand that there's people watching, that every video that I put out is so that when my kid doesn't have access to me to speak to her, then she has access to me to speak to her. That's why I do it.
How old's your daughter?
She's 20.
20, nice.
Yeah, she's 20.
Yeah. I like that's lovely. I might steal it. I've got two kids. I've got two daughters. I've got a 24-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Wow. That's a big.
It's a big gap. Well, the first one, like we know we've got jokes in the family. The first one, Eve was my beautiful accident, and Mirren was my beautiful plan.
Listen.
Yeah,
that's two little bookends.
It's gorgeous.
Of your life,
it's so nice.
That's beautiful.
And there's like 4 of us, like, so there's me, my 2 sisters, and my brother, and I bookend all of the kids as well, which is actually quite nice.
Yeah. Oh, that's really nice. That is really nice.
It's really nice.
That is lovely. So I think that if you I didn't go onto social media with a plan to have a following of however many thousand people. That wasn't my thought process at all. It was just to put and I didn't want to speak because I've got a Scottish accent, and it's always been the butt of the joke. Like, you live in the UK, Scottish accent and the Irish accent is like, and actually the weird accents make up more of the people. We are the global majority here in the United Kingdom. Yeah. So there are more of us with weirder accents than just the stuff you hear on TV.
And I think that's a really interesting energy, because when I started on social media, it was for a similar but slightly different reason, which was like for my past self in a way. Like, what did I not know, and why all these things I had to discover for myself. The lack of elders has been a big one for me as well. The lack of people to just fucking ask, who are not like...
Well, there you go. I walked into that shop and I had a woman who was absolutely like well, these are books, but you don't have to believe everything in these books, because actually historically X, Y, and Z, and I don't know anyone who's doing that. Like, I didn't,
No,
so
exactly. And then, so if anybody's like, oh, I really want to like get into social media, or I want to like use social media as a platform or build social media following, I think most of the people I know who are successful at it didn't go into it for that reason.
no,
There was like a higher purpose.
I will maintain now, even to this minute, I've got absolutely no idea what I'm doing on social media. People keep saying, "Do you want to, what are you asking me about questions about how many followers I've had and what things that I do engage more people?" And I'm like, I don't know. Where do you find that information? I have no idea. Just make a video and put it out. And
Yeah,
if
and
people like
when
it,
I
they do.
started like getting more into like analytics and like, when I was like looking behind the scenes and analytics and thinking it would be more strategic, honestly, it just got more difficult and things dropped off and weren't as popular. And went through this whole thing. I've been going through it the last few months actually, and you've been quite inspiring for me to remind me, because I've like maybe how many years has that been since COVID? 5 years or 6 years? So there's been quite a different evolution. I'm like, I just need to get back to what I do best, which is just showing up and doing videos that I want to do. So yeah,
I
so
find
I think
that
that's a
loads.
good
I
message.
find that loads. My husband's occasionally says to me, "Are you making a video this week?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't have anything to talk about." Oh, I don't have like a plan. I don't sit down and think, "Oh, I'm going to do a video about uh, transmutation, and then I'm going to do one about that." It's just whatever comes to me, and during my practice, if I'm honest, when I'm
Yeah.
sitting at my altar doing the stuff that keeps me whole as a human being, something might come to me, and then that's what I make a video about that day. And it's as simple as that.
I
There's
love it.
no plan. There is no plan.
There is no plan.
No.
There is no spoon. What's your husband's name?
I'm Stu.
Hi, Stu. I like
He's
that.
a
You've
good girl.
mentioned him like 18 times since we got on this call, which I really love because, like, I
He'll hate that. He's not.
tend to talk about my husband.
He's so private. He's like, "Oh, don't." He's not on any of my videos or anything. He's quite a
No,
private person, so he's.
yeah, mine's like that as well. My husband, he's really supportive and he loves it, but he's like, and he's actually been on the podcast a couple of times. He's willing to do that
That
as
is
long as it's not
nice.
his face. Yeah, no, he's come on and like, we've talked about. Well, it was encouraging because he was a genetic scientist at one point.
Oh,
It's not now, but so he was like, really into science, and I was the
hmm.
opposite. And like we talked about how we like managed that together and
Wow.
just. And then there was another time he came on and like interviewed me, which was really sweet, and we had quite a good time. So we do play together a little. We do overlap a little bit, but for the
Yeah.
most part, he's like, no. I'm like,
Yeah.
go and come and like chop wood for me on my. He's like, I'm not a thirst trap. I'm not going to come and like.
Ball hammer. Go for it. That's funny. Well, I don't
Yeah,
know
but
what to do.
he like makes like these. Wait a minute. It's like really into like he makes sacred objects. So he makes like.
Oh, lovely.
Have you seen these?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and
beautiful.
then like he made me this one here from Christmas, which you love as well. My big
Well,
rattle.
let me tell you about these things, and I really love them all when I see people using them. I've got this. I'm working on this thought process in my head. So I've been vegan for over 15 years, and I don't use animal products for anything that I do. And I don't like to, even if it's like a forage thing, I don't really like to show an animal product because I don't want people to then go and I don't mean on social media, I just mean in my general life. Like, I don't have anything that's, so, because it's not, we don't treat animals the way that we would have treated them 1,000 years ago. There's not the reverence there. It's just this big mass thing. So I don't use animal products for a whole host of reasons, but that's one of them. But I was over at my local park, and we've got these two beautiful big swans, and their clutch didn't work this year, and she disappeared in the spring. She was just like, "I'm out of here, I'm gone," and she left him on his own for ages. But she came back about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and they were preening each other by the side of the pond, and I was like so happy to see that she'd returned, and it was really lovely. And they normally just sit there. They don't get up and move when you walk past them. They normally just sit and look at you like, "What do you want?" But they both got up and waddled away, and they'd left like 3 enormously big white swan feathers, and I was like, "Thank you." So I picked up those 3 and I brought them home, and I'd like to make something with them, but that's the first animal product that I've had in my house, and I love. And there's like loads of people who make beautiful drums that I like. I play. Well, I don't play it hugely, but I play the bowden or the recht, and
Oh, me too.
And it's synthetic that I use, and I've seen people with like leather from deers that have been culled or by the side of the road, or so there's been no malice or anything like that in it. And like I don't know where I sit with that. That's something that I'm still.
I've had a big journey with that as well, because we do use we have drums that we give away and skin drums, and we used to sell them, but we don't do that now. We do that usually. We just do giveaways. But for me, it's like I got to the point where I was like, what will happen to this object if we don't use it for something in ceremony with reverence and with love? And in the case of most of our skins, they would end up in landfill.
I know.
They would just end up in the rubbish. Like if we have, sometimes we get horse skins from people who have had beloved pets.
See, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Or like we live in the Angus Glens where there's a lot of we have to cull the deer, because if we don't, then they overrun and they starve.
I know.
Exactly.
The deer culling thing is something that I have absolutely I've done a full 180 on that, because I didn't realise that if we don't do that, you've got all these elderly deer with no teeth because they can't eat and then they starve to death. And I didn't
awful.
It's horrible. So I've done a full 180 on that, and I now understand why that happens, because before I'd have been like out tying myself to trees.
Yeah, well, I think sometimes people think that I go out like, so that rattle that I showed you is a ram's horn, and obviously like the ram has to die for you to get the horns to don't fall off. Yeah. But people seem to think that I go around shooting rams in the head just to get their horns, but it's never that for us anyway, and I doubt it's that for anybody else. It's not worth it. And I think the farmers might be a bit annoyed if you start shooting their sheep for the horns, but it's like, what for us, or for me, is very much landed in that space of like, what I am connecting with the spirit of the animal, and we are in reverence. And if for us, what we've found is that if people end up with one of these sacred objects, then their connection to that animal and to the land and to the natural world gets stronger, because they have this like tactile, physical connection. It's really lovely. Yeah, like these guys up here.
Yeah, I see them.
A deer and a sheep. Well, I found these on different walks and stuff. So
I'd be all over that.
You're right.
I'd be all over that if I found something on a walk. In fact, my husband was opening up an old fireplace in our house, 120 odd years old, and he was like, "There's a crow's skull in here. Do you want it?" And I was like, "Yes." So I don't all of that stuff. I'm good. No, it's lovely, but I'm on a journey with that just now. It's animal exploitation is where my issue is, and that's
mine too.
Not what, that's not what a lot of this is. With.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the question? I've gone on a ramble.
I don't even know. This is why we're here, Gio, just to have a blether. I can't mind what we're even talking about. No, we're talking about social media, and then I asked you what your husband's name was, and you said Stu, and then we went down that route. And then I was like, oh, look what my husband makes. And then that took us on vegans. Got you.
Sorry.
So let's pick a new topic. No, I do. I love that. And it's good to be able to talk about the animal reverence part when you work with the land, and especially in shamanism, where you're more likely to work with animals in the way that we do. I think I'm not actually that clear on a lot of the similarities with animal practices and the way that we might have a saining fan or so. Yeah, for me, it's always like a good conversation to have to remove some of the misconceptions. Like, so for me, my line is that animal exploitation is a no, but also I don't like using plastic, which is what the vegan drums are as well. So I'm like,
absolutely.
I do have one or two from before. I'm like, you could really tie yourself up and not.
Well, this is the journey that I'm on. This is the journey, and like, it's like all plastic comes from the oil and gas industry. So exactly. So it's a journey. It really is trying to do the right thing for the right reason at the right time. It's hard.
Here, do you know, I know it's so hard. I saw one of your videos the other day. You were talking about the rule of 3 and that you don't work with it and why you don't work with it. But two things. Firstly, I don't know what the rule of 3 is, and I was curious because 3 is obviously a sacred number in Celtic mythology. So I work with the 3 cauldrons and the 3 this and the 3 that, and I love 3s. So I didn't know you guys on your side had a rule of 3, but I don't like rules either. So I was like, ooh, like, what is it? And why don't you use it? And then also I thought we could get onto like the idea of like learning the difference between being method based, it has to be this way, versus personal gnosis, personal truth, like taking what feels good and right and then working with that. So
yeah. So the rule of three is this. I'm sure it's a Wiccan belief. Now, Wicca is one of these things, talking about closed practices. Wicca is a closed practice. You have to be initiated into that practice. So there's lots of books on Wicca. I know. So there's lots of books on Wicca, and you can read about it, and you can say that you're Wiccan, but actually Gardnerian Wiccans or any other, there's initiation ceremonies. So I'm sure there's lots of Wiccans out there that get really peeved that people are using their rules, I suppose. And I think the rule of three came from a Wiccan rule, which is basically whatever you put out into the world, good, bad, or indifferent, will come back to you times three. So it's like the Wiccan rule of karma-ish, if that's what karma was. But it's not. I don't subscribe to that at all. I don't think that I still think that your actions, there'll be a reaction to whatever action that you put out. But
well, karma means action.
Yeah. So the thing I love about the first ever story I get told from a Buddhist monastic about what karma meant to them was that I was on a retreat for a few days, and I expressed on more than one occasion that I felt guilty that I was there and not at home with my daughter, who was about 4 or 5 at the time. And he told us a story about how this woman lived her life and gave everything to her family, made sure her sons had everything they needed, did it all the time. She was a beautiful artist, but she gave everything up, and she did that for them and made sure everyone had everything they needed. And she was doing good for her family and good for her husband and good for her community and good for everyone else because she wanted to build karma. And then when she passed and she was coming back to life, then she had karma she'd built up bad karma for her. I hate the word good and bad, but she'd built up karma for her that wasn't good karma because she had neglected herself in that life. And there's nothing moral about that. There's no morality to say you've been a good person, but if you've been a good person at the
expense of yourself,
or the expense of other people, then that's karma, and you have to come back and relearn that, to learn that action to understand it. So when people equate the rule of three, which is this morally based, whatever you put out, you get back thing to karma, that irks me a little bit. But also I don't believe in the rule of three because I feel like I think that if you want to, will I call it hexes or will I call it justice work? I think if you want to do justice work for someone who's doing something wrong in life, then you can. Because if someone in the physical real world had their boot on my neck, I will fight that person with every ounce of my being to get free from that. That doesn't mean that I'm just going to fight random people in the street. It's as a response to that thing happening. So if you want to hex someone or put them in a freezer jar spell or you use baneful magic, then if you're justified in that, then carry on. And I don't think that that's going to come back 3 times to you. That's not you're responding as an action of that person's action. So there'll be a constant, backwards and forwards reaction. But the rule of three would be if you did something really nice for someone, 3 really nice things would happen to you. If you did something bad to someone, 3 really bad things would happen to you. And I'm not up for that. That's it. That feels like dogma that I don't need to.
It does, doesn't it? It feels like a little on the thin side philosophically.
So I'm not Wiccan, so that's not a rule that I have to follow as part of my religion. But I also don't think that that's it's kind of like that in the Christian religion, they have sins, and I don't have that either.
Which I also don't like.
No, I don't have that either.
It's a bit silly. Yeah, like the whole Catholic idea of like purgatory, just really, when I figured that out, I thought, how sad is that? It's so sad. I actually had grief around it.
It is really sad. That's what the idea of purgatory is what turned my mum away from Catholicism. So
yeah.
She still holds on to all the guilt of it, but it's
oh, that's a shame. I know, and that's the other thing about it, is Catholic and Protestant guilt, like just Christian guilt. It's like guilt. Imagine living your whole life.
I think there's guilt in lots of religions, and I think that's the thing I like about witchcraft, is that it gives me a connection to the divine. Again, people don't like using that word because they think that you're talking
love
about...
it. I love divine.
I love the divine.
I love the
I've
word
said
God
it
as
a
well.
few times. Me too. I love all of it. Like, it's just language.
It's the label doesn't matter, it's the soul that counts, right?
Yeah, totally. It's like, you could have 1,000 different recipes for soup, and minestrone is not the same as Cullen skink, but they're both soup, So
Exactly.
But yeah, I think that having something that gives you a connection to the divine without the rules and regulations of you're going to eternal damnation if you don't believe this.
And what's really funny, don't you think, as well, is that just in our culture we have this, like, even if we're not, because my family weren't religious either, spiritual definitely, but not religious necessarily. But what I see everywhere now, especially with the decline in Christianity, is that the dogma still resides nonetheless in quiet places, like the guilt and the rule based, and if you do bad things then you're a bad person. Yep. It just like the really worst of Christianity seems to to have stuck around quietly somehow. I made
a video a few weeks ago about that whole negative and positive energy chat, and the general consensus that I have about that is that negative and positive energy is a term that is related to physics and the presence or absence of a positive charge. It's got nothing. Energy is just energy. The energy that we all have the ability to clock into merely exists. There's no moral pile that you have to put it in. It's just wherever you're directing that. That's the so I don't ever get upset about when someone said, "Oh, there's bad energy there." I'm like, well, there's energy there that doesn't suit the environment. That's maybe it's not that it's
or
bad.
that doesn't suit you.
Well, if you exactly. But so it's not that it's bad energy. It's just that it's energy that's not for this place, or it's not for the purpose. It's not fit for purpose energy. There's other energy around. You can work with that how you like, but that's I do quite like that. But so the good and the bad and the negative and the positive, I try not to get too hooked up in that. I'm doing what I'm doing.
Well, it's kind of like also like it's quite binary as well, so it like splits things into like must be this or that, where actually like that's not really how life works. Like there's two sides to every coin, there's different sides to every story, there's so much nuance and
heaps of it.
It's intertwined, like just there's so much going on that to like break it down into something so basic, it's really reductionist, and
absolutely.
Don't think we really connect with the truth that way either.
No, there's so many people
can be true simultaneously.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many people message me online and say things like, "Oh, that was a really nice spell. Could I do it with a white candle, or could I do it with 2 pieces of string, or could I?" And I'm like, you can do whatever you want to do. It's your practice. That's how I did it. But if you want to do it just do it whatever way you want to do it. It's the connection that you're trying to get, not and any book that you've ever read, unless it's a historical textbook about it's some academic something or other. Even then, sometimes
spirituality evolves. Yeah. Like if you think about, I like to talk about second sight, right? So second sight's a thing. My parents were both spiritual mediums, and I think that second sight potentially naturally evolved into that along certain threads, like not entirely, obviously it's gone other places too, but that was one of the threads that ended up in that space. And I mean, I was baptised in a spiritualist church. Like my parents were both like mediums, readery people. And I struggled with it for a long time. I had a big dance with it because I saw how negative it was. I saw how people got sucked in and addicted, and I was like, what's the point of this? There doesn't seem to be any outcome. Like there doesn't seem to be any actual like good that comes out of this. And also people often get it wrong, or they're not confident, or you can see that they're like the characters who are like super ego characters who are just like playing the room, and I'm like 8 being like, this what the fuck?
Yeah, but you get that in every single nugget of life, that's
exactly. But then I'm like, in the vein of like spirituality evolving, second sight, you read anything about second sight, it's always interestingly, it's either on remember death, marriages and money. I think it's like very 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 narrow focus of what they were really interested in, apart from maybe like the Brahan seer who did prophecy, which is a slightly different thing. And it was a curse. It was seen as a curse, and I'm like, ooh, And then I got all excited because I was like, well, probably it wasn't like that before, and it's probably got that way because of Christianity and how Christianity had like a total stranglehold over Scotland at that time. So of course it would be seen as a curse, because who would want to admit that they have stepped out of like the Christian like narrow lines to, you know, connect with spirit in another way.
And if you did, that was one of the things that got you ticked the box to say you're a witch. Let's strangle you now and burn you somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. So I got really excited about that, and I was like, ooh, developing this idea of second sight, and I use the word seership actually as opposed to second sight, but developing that skill, which is something that I love and I'm good at and like have always been able to do, is really exciting to me. It's almost like full circle. I wonder what it was like pre all of that fucking mess, but also what's it going to be like in the future? Like, how can we develop it and take it forward for our culture instead of being dogmatic and stuck in what it should be in the past? And also, you mentioned closed practice, which is one of my bugbears, and I feel like I've been screaming into the void, and I felt quite alone on the subject actually in Scotland, because I have never felt that the practices that I have learned have been closed. There's no, for me, I love the way you talk about it, but I used to say, you know, to me, the sense I made of it was like there are no elders, there's nobody who gets to decide if it's closed. It's a fairly broken lineage, like, you know, we're piecing things together, like how can it. And anyway, if somebody loves it and wants to connect with it, why are you so bothered? So I'll stop because I might get in a rant. I'm already in a rant, but like what? But you've talked about that. So what's your like view on it, and how did you come to that conclusion yourself?
So I'm really globally, I'm really aware that there's closed practices, and the reason behind there being closed practices, because when you look at things like hoodoo and voodoo, for example, those were people who were stolen from their land, carted halfway across the world, and they're trying to maintain a lineage to somewhere that's spiritually and significantly everything important to them. So I don't think that I think that it's okay to learn about that stuff, but maybe not. I've got books that have got information about hoodoo and voodoo in them, and I'll read them. But I'm not going to run a workshop on hoodoo and voodoo practices. That's not mine. I don't get to talk about that. Similarly with things like Native American culture as well, there are certain practices within Native American culture that they do in their own culture after they've gone through a coming of age ceremony, or, you know, and again, that's not for me, and I don't need to be there. I like to learn about it and understand what it is, but I don't need to burn white sage in order to do that. Within Scottish culture, and I think the reason that when I started posting about saining, and I did get a few people come to me and say, "Oh, I heard that's a closed practice," I had conversation with them about it, because I understand why they were saying it, because we are a colonised land like these other places are. The difference being is that our colonisation happened 2,000 years ago, not 500 years ago. So there is no absolutely unbroken tapestry back to Iron Age Scots. There isn't. It doesn't exist. There is a tentative thread that comes through it, and there's loads of Christian language being sewn into it. So the fact that the language has changed from what it would have been then, and it now has Christian annotations to it, means that is it. That means it's not closed, because it was changed. And we're allowed to, in 2025, change that language again and make it be something that is appropriate for us now. So you can't possibly close something that's already changed, because you're closing it past the point, and then at that point you're maintaining a cultural practice that is not a living practice. The first comment that I had on that video about saining, first point I'm going to make about saining is this much of it is about smoke.
Oh yeah, totally. Hello.
It's like that much is smoke, and I made a video about a smoke seine for New Year, because historically that's when we would have done that. And the first thing I got was, well, actually, did you know that that's not actually what saining is? And I was like, oh, well, actually, 20 odd years of me doing it, and my mum used to do it, and my granny did it. Like, and they were like, you need to use juniper, and you have to smoke your entire house out. And I'm like, you're reading textbooks that spoke about that practice when we lived in houses with a hole in the ceiling, and that was our chimney. And they were literally smoking out the entire room, and they used juniper to do that because it was abundant in the area that they lived. And the book said, don't cut it with iron, uproot the whole plant, right?
Well, I like my juniper plant. I don't really want to uproot our plants.
It was like, uproot the plant, burn it, and smoke your whole house out. That might have been appropriate 2,000 years ago. That is not appropriate now. And if I can use other plants that I've developed a relationship with and I have a close plant allyship with, then I'll use those over juniper, because juniper is now almost on the endangered list in Scotland. It is 99% of the juniper that was around back then is no longer exists. So we shouldn't be using it in massive
quantities,
huge amounts, and wafting around our house. Anyway, so I had that conversation. I pointed them to lots and lots of online resources about people who have been talking about it for decades, since the 1800s, and said, look, this is a saining rite and a saining prayer, and it says Jesus' name in it, and Mary's name in it, and Michael's name in it. So that cannot be closed, because that's Christian. But there are gods that are long forgotten.
Long gone, yeah.
The names would have been there now. So that was my introduction into TikTok, was that trying to explain to people what saining was. And then
I mean, it's fascinating, and the conversation around like close practice and is really interesting. So I'm going to circle back to a couple of things you said, because just get your thoughts on it. But the native cultural practice, I have many friends. I choose not to practice Native American things. I don't even like rituals and ceremonies, because it doesn't call to me. Like, it doesn't excite me. Even during my training, my teacher was great. She would bring in things from like all over the world, and I was like, oh, this is interesting, great, yeah, but not really. But anyway, I do have friends who've spent, in one case, over a decade training with Native people, who want to share their lineage, and they want to share the practices, and they teach the white man, if you like, and then they bring it back, in this case to England. They all live in England for some reason, and then they teach it, and they get a lot of flack for it. But I'm like, well, I just try and stay out of a conversation that doesn't have anything to do with me, is what I try and do, because I'm like, I hear that there are, I know deeply that there are real issues with cultural appropriation, and like you were saying, like you would read a voodoo book and then go off and do it and profit from it by doing a workshop. Potentially problematic if all you've done is read some books. But then if someone's apprenticed, and this is the thing about Celtic culture as well, right? So some people are really, really drawn to Celtic culture, but they're like, I don't have any DNA, I don't have any history. And I'm like, well, how do you know your ancestor didn't travel? An apprentice with somebody from Celtic lands. You don't know that. Like, you don't know why you're so drawn to that practice that it's almost like in your bones. I get people coming to me begging me to be allowed to practice, and I'm like, if you want to, if you love it, and if you're going to be mindful, in right relationship with, in my case I use guides, you guys I think are more like familiars, I don't know if you do that, but in right relationship with your guides, in right relationship with the land, then great. The native people I talk to are delighted that people are finally starting to learn how to love the land. And then the other thing I was going to say was, I got an email from a native-owned company who said, please stop talking about not using white sage, because we grow it and sell it, and our sales are dropping because people have stopped buying it and we don't know what to do. And I'm like, I don't think I can touch that. I don't know how to even look at I couldn't be any more Aryan if I tried. I don't really think that me talking about your white sage is going to be a good idea, but if I can help you.
Yeah.
But it's like things like that. So it's like such a nuanced conversation that I find it quite tricky to.
It is tricky, but I think the thing is that like white sage grows in a very specific place in the world.
It does.
And as a Scottish woman who practices Celtic practices, I've got no business touching it. I mean,
I agree with that, but
yeah, and I don't know. But
yeah,
I've been approached by a few like metaphysical shops in the UK who have been like, could you punt some of our stuff for? And I don't do that generally. I've been sent a couple of things actually recently that I'm going to speak about because they're really good, but I don't do that generally. I don't do that. Well, send me stuff and that's not part of who I am as a person. And I go back to them and say, well, I will, but you're selling plants that you've like literally pushed around the world to here, and we've got loads of native plants from the UK that people should be buying and growing or using themselves. And it would be better if you sold that, because if you don't see it and you don't know that that's what you're supposed to, because we've got no elders, then you're looking for spirituality outside of your own wheelhouse, and you start to go externally to do that. I had a really lovely conversation with someone who is in our community online, who is from New Zealand, and they're Maori, but has if I remember this right, has a Scottish grandparent. And we had the conversation about why do people in the West, as she called us, in Europe, seek spirituality in things like yoga, for example. And I said, because it's available. There is no, it's
visual.
We all want access to the divine. We all want access to feel that power inside ourselves. And those things are available to us. There's lots of people who study yoga who then go on to study more in-depth parts of their practice, or study Buddhism, or study, but that's because it's in front of their face to do it. There's yoga classes in every town hall in Glasgow, but is there Celtic traditional drum making classes in those places? So we're all seeking the connection to spirit, and we'll accept it on however it presents itself to us. And I think the thing with white sage is, and things like Palo Santo as well, that they've been brought in to fill a hole in a spiritual requirement that didn't need that hole filled with that stuff. That we've got our own thing to do, and I think we're in that kind of borderline point where we're trying to educate people on what they could be using and what they can be growing and working with on their own, and what's available to them. And even if I live in Glasgow, there's a juniper bush like half a mile from my house. I know that there's these things, but that is the connectedness to the land. When you buy a bundle of something from anywhere, a bundle of anything, even if you walk into a shop and buy a bundle of juniper, you've got no connection to that. You didn't cut it.
No, you're right. Absolutely.
Right. So it's less about being concerned about even people's sales dropping, and more about go out into land, stop commodifying it in a way that is just adding to spending money on stuff and taking your connection to where it came from away, rather than actually going out or growing the thing in your own space, watching it be a seed, be a sapling, be the thing. Talk to it every day, do all the stuff to it. So when I speak about things like white sage, Palo Santo, and juniper bundles as well, and lavender bundles, or whatever bundles you want to buy, it's when you hand over cash for someone who's pre-wrapped that for you in a little plastic baggie, you've removed yourself from where it came from. You've commodified something that deserves a divine connection, and that's my biggest issue.
I know, I love that. That's a really lovely explanation. And there's two things you said there that really jumped out. One of them was about visibility and making things more visible. The more visible they are, the more likely people are to connect with them, which I think is partly what you and I do, although we have different labels. And I guess in a way that, because one of the things that I used to get grief for was because people thought I had bought the herbs. Now, my sister's a herbalist, and she has a garden, and we gather things together, and they do look very well made because that's what we do. Do you know what I mean? But
then they're going to look well made if you do it yourself.
I know, but it was interesting. But anyway, the point is, it got me onto this thought process about how I find my way here. So I love what you're saying about educating people to get to the point where perhaps they can gather and grow. But when people I've got a point. Wait a minute, it's running around my head. So when people don't know, they can't do. So I love the conversation around white sage and Palo Santo and other herbs that aren't grown in this country, and people are like, great, right, well, I'm going to start buying whatever, juniper and mugwort instead. Great. And I'm like, great, yes, step, movement, it's a really important like progression. And then if you get to the point where, because like one of the things I never want, or I try not to do when I create content, is to make people feel bad for their choices. So
Yeah.
and like I'm like, if it's a choice between like this herb not from the country and this herb, then bash on. But if you can grow it, or you do have time or space or you're privileged enough to be able to get out into your landscape, please do. I mean, even grass will burn if you dry it.
It will. But then, so when I'm speaking about growing it and buying it and doing it all yourself, I really appreciate there are people out there who just can't do it. One, they physically can't do it, nor they don't have the capacity to do it. So if you're buying a bundle of juniper that was grown in the UK, then that's just a step. That's bringing that commodification that's out there a step smaller and bringing it back closer to where you are. So it's not. I'm not saying people don't buy herbs. There's some things I like to work with that are native to the UK that I can't grow. I live in a tenement flat in Glasgow. So I'd love to be able to. And there's things I just can't grow, and I'll buy them. But I buy them from places where I know that you do a bit of due diligence and you understand that that's been from, I'm not buying my herbs off Amazon. I'm going to a herbalist shop
like small businesses and
somewhere that's close to my front door that I can say to them, do you know the growers of this stuff? And then you're then putting your money back into our space rather than buying white sage from a place that grows literally like 7,000 miles away from where we live to send it here. And people keep saying, someone brought me white sage as a gift, should I use it? If you like. It's a gift someone's brought you, or you've been given it by a native friend and they've said, here, I'd like you to have that, then that's a beautiful gift that someone's given you. But there's a very big difference between that and a container load of it getting shipped across the sea. It's just about trying to just be mindful of where your products are coming from. Absolutely, your footprint. You're trying to close that commodification gap a little bit, and just because sometimes you have to buy things and pay for it, and it is a commodity at that point. But you know that if you've bought it from someone who is
who gives a shit,
then it's good, Yeah, it is. It's a big, big subject. I could talk about that for hours and hours and hours.
I know, I love it as well, and I like to try and as a past, I used to be really narrow-minded. I grew up in Methil in the 90s.
Nice.
There's not much going on there philosophically wise. No offence to my fellow Methil leaving mouth friends and family, but
even if they're watching, they'll be talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my parents were definitely the weirdos, but I forgot what I was even going to say. But so becoming aware of issues. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So it's trying to bring in all sides, and I really enjoyed this conversation because you've given me some things. You've given me a different language.
Okay.
I've noticed the way we explain things is different, right? You've got a different lovely angle that I know, but it's almost bringing in a different type of magic when it comes in from this slightly different
perspective.
Words are like magic, right? So brilliant, yeah. And then so there's this sense that I have around trying to have conversations like this, bringing in lots of different perspectives, because it's not necessarily black and white. It's not black and white. There are so many different things that people worry about or think about or need to connect with, and if anything about the way that you teach that I can see so far, and myself as well, it's about finding your own way without guilt and shame and that thing we were talking about earlier about that leftover Christian fucking nonsense that overlays so much of what we do we're not mindful of it. Spirituality is that we live in I'm going to change the subject. So we live in this really beautiful time where we are deeply privileged to be able to choose what we connect with spiritually, and that's a rare fucking time to live in. Can you imagine 100 years ago, 50 years ago, even in Scotland, you couldn't choose what you did without risk of being either actually executed or certainly excommunicated from your tribe, jailed. It's, and I feel like one of the things that I would like to encourage people to do is to be like, oh wow, I can be mindful of what of issues, but I can also take what resonates and leave what doesn't. Like, you're allowed to do that now in a way that we've never been allowed to do, especially as women, actually.
Yeah.
Especially as women. And the
Especially, yeah.
history of fucking mankind in the last 2,000 years, just about. So I'm like, be creative, like try things. If it's not singing to your soul, gently put it to the side. Like, just go follow the
Yeah.
threads that fill your heart and fill your soul, and be mindful of global
Yeah. I think
issues, but still,
most,
like, don't let it swamp you.
most of the things that I do when I talk about being mindful of stuff, I think this is where my veganism's probably taught me lots over outside of what I choose to do from an animal perspective. Whether I am buying shopping, I was going to say buying messages, but I don't know if that's going to translate well.
Messages.
if I'm buying groceries, if I'm buying my shopping, or picking clothes to wear, or purchasing a car, or anything that I'm expending my money or energy on, the thought process I have in my head first, that the first filter that it comes through is there a way to reduce the exploitation here? Because people are exploited in it doesn't matter what it is that's happening, there's exploitation happens across all of it. And if there's something that I can do to reduce the level of exploitation that happens, then I will start going down that path and figure out that if it is or isn't. And I do that with my practice as well. Working in if I'm reading about a new book that I've got and it's talking about a different type of style of practice that I've got, then I look at that and not to poke holes in people, but to make sure that fits me as a person. What ways can I reduce any exploitation that shows up there? So if something calls for a beeswax candle, for example, I know that that's vegan, but I don't use that because I've got an option of using something else. And people, if I use a soy candle, people will argue that soy candle, there's exploitation in soy, but it's what my head sees as being the least exploitative thing that I can do. And I think if you can do that in your life with starting things with the idea that you're trying to do as least harm as you can possibly do, and the least amount of exploitation that you can have, then do what you will after that point, but just do what you will.
And I couldn't agree with that more. And I've touched on the veganism thing a couple of times here, but just because I love it, and I love how different people can come to different conclusions whilst holding very similar intentions. But for me, what that looks like is like, we find because I'm not my mum's a vegan and has been since I was really young, so I've always been aware of it. But for me, I decided that we source our meat locally. Mm-hmm. We source our meat through local hunters, and we know where everything comes from, and that's what we do. So anything we buy and eat, or we try to, obviously it's not always possible depending on what our fussy 4-year-old wants to eat, but for the most part we're like local, how far does it travel, the exploitation thing, and that's where we landed with it. But that doesn't make me right and you wrong.
No, not at all.
That's just not that exactly. But I think people get into that like good or bad sphere, right?
I'm not up for good or bad on that at all.
It doesn't work, does it?
It makes you right for you, and it makes me right for me. Like,
exactly.
If you and I if we did that whole Freaky Friday thing and switched lives, then you being in my life, that still wouldn't be right for you, because everything that has made you the person you are, that's the choices that you've made, and everything that's made me the person that I am is the choices that I've made. Equally see that as, and I know some really militant vegans, and I join them sometimes, but because I can absolutely see the argument of, I was vegan, my daughter's also vegan. I was vegan, I'm not trying to score points, I was vegan first, but I did that for myself. What I mean by that is that she didn't become vegan and then I did it. There was already veganism happening in our house, and I wasn't pushing that on her. Like, I'm not pushing my craft on her either. She can do this or not. And she asked if she could be vegan, and I said, well, the choice. I said to her, well, you can, but you're only ever going to have two choices for your dinner, and it's going to be take it or leave it. And she said, right, okay. So So because I know that the food I'm putting down to her is whole foods that don't cost an awful lot of money to prepare, but she's going to get bored of lentils and all of that stuff pretty quickly. And if she starts moaning about it, then that's what you're doing. But God, if I'm away with my point again. No, it's gone. I was making a point there and it's gone out of my head. That's what happened.
When that happens.
Yeah,
we've done well. We've done well, Gio.
That's that perimenopause happening.
I know it's annoying. Exactly.
I just accept when that happens. I'm like, well, I'm not supposed to talk about that.
Maybe you'll do a Billy Connolly and get back. I'll come back round. I don't know.
I'll come back round again. I know.
But no, I think that what the general feeling of this part of the conversation is try and just do what's right for you. Try and just do what's best, what you feel is right. There's 8 billion whatever people on the planet, and there's plenty of people who are going to try and tell you what to do, who you should be, how you should think, what you should focus on. You only get one shot, you get one goal.
Exist just exist in your life without intentionally trying to harm others, and when you know others are being harmed, try and reduce that harm as much as you can.
Yeah.
I don't have any other. That's
just live around that. Exactly, and just live around that and try and leave the guilt at the door because it doesn't do any good. Yeah. Gio, thank you. This has been fabulous. I've had a lovely chat. Where can people find you?
That's over an hour. Yeah, that's not so bad, hey?
Yeah. Where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram and TikTok are the only 2 places that I post regularly. There isn't a difference between the 2 of the things. It's just churn one out on one and it goes straight onto the other. I've got
and your handle is at that Glasgow Witch.
Yes, it's at that Glasgow Witch. I think there are quite a few imposter accounts who all block me, so I can't see them. So on TikTok, I think I've got 130,000 or something on TikTok, and on Instagram 230. So if there's any less than that, then it's some scammer trying to tell you. The other thing is I don't do readings. So if anyone ever messages you and says, I've had a reading for you.
Me too. I don't do readings either.
Why not?
That's been happening for 4 fucking years. People there must be hundreds of accounts, and people email me and they're like, I've been scammed, and I'm like, I'm so sorry.
I know but I feel as if people have got a bit more wily now to understand that that's what happens in that space. But yeah, that really rips my knitting when that.
We don't do readings. I'm going to put this on social media, with us just
on my profile page on TikTok, or one of the 2 of them, it says I don't do readings. I will never DM you for a reading. My DMs are closed. I don't, and I love speaking to people, so I hate that they're closed. But I don't do readings at all.
So we'll find you at that Glasgow Witch.
At that Glasgow Witch, TikTok, on Instagram. I do have a YouTube channel because I thought I should have, but I don't really know what to do on YouTube, so it's just there.
Well, this will go on YouTube, so I'll tag you, and then presumably you'll have a link, because I know that you do saining workshops and you'll do other bits and pieces. So if people are interested in working with Gio, you'll get on our link in your bio, I assume.
It's all there. I have a website. Sorry, that's completely. I hate saying that. I have a website, but there's a website too. It's my website. It's just so that if I'm putting out workshops, or I have a calendar subscription service for a calendar that helps people follow the dates for the Celtic fire festivals, the old dates and the new dates.
Nice, so, the Colleen new moon ones and the
I love all that. But also just to remind people that the date is not a tick box; it is a season. And if you want to celebrate,
my new book is called The Celtic Wheel of the Year, and see how many times in it I've wrote it's a season.
It's not like a birthday, we're getting really good at human beings at being it's my birthday week and it's my birthday month, right? I love that, because you're doing lots of celebrating of something that's wonderful for you. And I feel like that about the fire festivals as well. When someone says, "Oh, I miss Samhain," and I'm like, "It's November. You didn't."
2 weeks.
Yeah, you're good. You can sit down and have a dumb supper anytime you like. There's no rush. So I have a website where I put my workshops on. I don't do them all the time. I have a job outside of being a witch, and I've never seen myself as a teacher. But I realise that's really ironic that I have a workshop, but I feel as if people have asked, so I'm just telling them how I practice. It's that I've done the saining workshop once before, and that was just at the summer solstice, and then I'm doing it again just coming up on the equinox, which is really ironically 2 times when saining is probably not mentioned about doing at those times of the year. But I feel that it gets you ready for the season that's coming.
It does.
So
it does.
But yeah, so and it's really nice because when we're doing the saining workshops, people are talking loads about it afterwards, which is nice to see the word put out there and for people to understand that words and water make up far more of it than fire and smoke.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly. Thank you so much. Had a smashing time. Let's do it again because I think we've got at least another 15 podcasts in us after today.
No, could do. You definitely could do. There's so much to talk about. It's just such a big vast thing that I could talk about all the time. I think that I like a soulful conversation. I like it when it goes to places that makes you feel uncomfortable and ask you questioning yourself. And I like it when people have got differences of opinions, and it's good to do. It's good to have those. That's what makes you grow as a person.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I've had a great time, and we will hopefully see you again soon.